Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Kara Carmack, the Assistant Director of Exhibitions and Public Programs at the New York Studio School, and I'm honored to welcome you to our Spring 2024 Evening Lecture Series. We're delighted to be joined this evening by speakers Andrea Woodner, Karen Wilkin, and Alison de Lima Greene. A reminder to those here on 8th Street to please silence all cell phones during tonight's event. We'll reserve time at the end for a Q&A with the audience. For those in the room, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you so our online audience can hear your question. For our Zoom audience, you can submit your questions by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Following the lecture, please join me and our guests downstairs in the Clayroom for light refreshments and to continue the conversation. The New York Studio School is grateful to the following funders for their support of the 2023-24 Evening Lecture Series: the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York State Council on the Arts, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, the Robert Lehman Foundation, the Samuel H. Kress Foundation, and many generous individual contributors. Please visit our website to learn more or to make a donation to help keep programs like our evening lecture series free. Now I'm delighted to introduce our guests this evening. Andrea Woodner is a sculptor, cellist, collector of drawings, and horsewoman. She received a Bachelor of Arts from Bennington College and served apprenticeships with sculptors Isaac Whitkin and Anthony Caro, and with metal fabricator Bob Walcott in the 1970s and 1980s while making sculpture in White Creek, New York, London, and New York City. She then attended Harvard University's Graduate School of Architecture and Planning and received a master's in architecture from Columbia's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. In 1995, Woodner founded the Design Trust for Public Space, dedicated to the well-being and understanding of public space in New York City. Woodner was its first director and served as its president until 2016, when she launched the Hercules Art Studio program, with facilities in Lower Manhattan providing affordable studio and meeting space for artists beginning their careers in New York City. Woodner lives in New York City and Millbrook, New York. Karen Wilkin is an independent curator and critic, the author of monographs on Stuart Davis, David Smith, Anthony Caro, Kenneth Noland, Helen Frankenthaler, Giorgio Morandi, and Hans Hofmann. She's organized exhibitions of their work internationally, among many, many others. She's a regular contributor to Hudson Review, New Criterion, and the Wall Street Journal. Wilkin teaches in the New York Studio School's MFA program. Alison de Lima Greene is the Isabel Brown Wilson Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. A 2010 fellow at the Center for Curatorial Leadership, she has organized numerous exhibitions, and her recent projects have profiled Mark Rothko, Mike and Doug Starn, and Pipilotti Rist. Working closely with Harry Cooper, Kate Nesin, and Mark Godfrey, she co-curated the traveling Philip Guston Now exhibition. Now please join me in offering a very warm welcome to our speakers.
Does this sound good to everybody? Yep. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Woodner. Really happy to be here. I live in the neighborhood, so I just had to walk around the corner to get here. And it's really nice to be in the midst of so many artists and art lovers. Very happy to be here. I want to thank Kara Carmack and Karen Wilkin for this opportunity to come and speak with you tonight about collecting art. The other person I'd like to thank, who I think is listening in through the internet device and couldn't be here, is Dr. Jennifer Jones. Jennifer has really helped build this collection through 2 generations, and it's really been indispensable to my being able to carry on the way I do. She's a wonderful friend and a real mentor to me. And she was hired as a young woman by Ian Woodner, who I think sized her up the minute she walked in the door and decided he was going to hire her, but then he went through the interview process anyway. It was obviously successful, and at the end of the interview, he said, short interview, at the end of the interview, he said, "There's just one thing I want you to do. I want you to learn to think like I do." So that was her assignment. Now I'm trying to learn to think like Jennifer does. But we're having a great time together. So I will start by reading to you a little preface that I wrote before we get into the images that I'm really anxious to share with you. What I want to talk about tonight is what it's like to have in my possession a large part of a phenomenal collection that was assembled over a lifetime by someone else. Since that someone else was my father, Ian Woodner, that means that I grew up with these works in my home, and I also worked with them as a kind of a curatorial assistant, which meant mostly inventory and schlepping of art. Ian was also an artist. He built the collection and perceived and understood the works with an artist's eye. This is how I was taught. I have no art history education per se, other than what I have gleaned by my contact with the works in the collection and other collections and loan exhibitions, by reading and by association with the incredible collectors, curators, and scholars who knew and worked closely with my father, many of whom he became fast friends with. Now it is my aim, and I consider it my responsibility, to safeguard the collection and to plan for its future, and from time to time to lend to exhibitions, as well as to show works to scholars and to curators who want to study them. But more than that, I found myself wanting to build on this phenomenal foundation by acquiring works that are of great quality to the extent that I've been able. By and large, my tastes were informed by Ian's. He was my mentor, but even so, there are certain differences. He liked portrait drawings, especially large ones, as he made some himself. He was an amateur artist, and he was particularly fond of self-portraits. I tend to gravitate towards images of animals, as I have a close relationship with them myself. But the critical through line is the conviction that if something is great, it's great, and that one feels deeply compelled to try for it as best one can. The art market is a fast-moving stream. You have to cast your line. One other thing, people tend to look, and I particularly want to say this to this audience who has a lot of working artists here tonight. People tend to look at master drawings as though they were set on a pedestal from another rarefied world where rich people collect and big institutions exhibit, and you better stand and look with your hands behind your back. But all of these drawings were made by grubby artists looking for truth and for beauty, just like many of you in this room. And I think artists and the rest of us need to demystify them, to take them off the walls, to hold them, to study them, even if possible, feel the paper, and then look at these works of art again and again and again. So now I'm going to attempt to run through a PowerPoint presentation, which I've never done before. Before I get started, I wanted to say just a few more words about the images. In nearly all cases, the images on the left, I'm going to start so you can have something to look at. The images on the left are works that I inherited, while the images on the right are works that I subsequently was able to acquire. Then, just to give you a little preview, in the first section, I compare works that I inherited with works by the same artist that I was subsequently able to acquire, but in some cases they are by different artists with close and interesting similarities. We will come across a double image at some point, and that is a work that my sister and I unfortunately had to sell that I was particularly very fond of. We needed to raise money at the time to pay off some of the inheritance debt. I really loved it. And then, years later, it came back to auction and I was able to reacquire it. I have a section called Dream On, which are works by masters that came on the market and that was way beyond my capability, and I would dearly love to have owned them, but as I said, dream on. There are a few images of what I call regrets, which is works that I did not try for, that to this day I really do regret that I didn't try. And then there's a section called Phew, which, as that implies, are ones that I was outbid on. In some ways, I was relieved to be outbid, and I think I did the seller and the auction house a service to be the underbidder on those works. All right, now we're going to go through, and I have some stories to tell. These are both by Goya, Spanish artist. The one on the left that I inherited, called Loco Furioso, is an image of a madman who is confined to prison, a lunatic asylum. And as you can see, a great deal of pathos in his expression as he desperately tries to escape the bars with a look of passion, fury, bewilderment, a blend of emotions. The work that I was remarkably able to acquire, because I'm not sure why I didn't get outbid on it, but I didn't. That's another aspect of Goya's understanding of life and of the world. Trabajos útiles, which means useful work. And it's a very lighthearted picture of three lovely young ladies hanging up laundry on the side of the river, a little sexy, a little provocative, absolutely masterful. And what I love about having both of these works in my collection is that it really bookends the experiences of life, and that one artist could grasp this spectrum of human emotion and human understanding, I think is quite remarkable and shows the mark of high artistry. So I love having these together, both as individual works, which are of the highest quality, I think, but also because of what they say about a true humanist understanding of human nature. Now here we have the Agostino Carracci on the left, one of my father's pride and joy, a rather large and imposing sheet by a mythological subject called The Story of Aurora and Cephalus. And then we have the drawing that I acquired by Parmigianino, which is a story from the Bible of Daniel in the lion's den. One high Renaissance, one Mannerist. The Parmigianino very beholden to Michelangelo in the contrapposto and in the dramatic pose that the figure of Daniel takes. What I love about comparing these two works is that the Parmigianino is at most the size of a postcard, and the Carracci is quite a large and a formidable drawing. But by looking at these two artists together, I think you can just see how the two masters were able to realize the human figure regardless of scale. I think it's a really interesting comparison. Another actually more like halfway between postcard and postage stamp, the Correggio drawing on the left that my father collected, and the Raffaellino del Garbo drawing on the right that I acquired. I put these two together simply because I found the poses so compatible and so harmonious with one another, and the gestures. So really just a visual, just something to look at and enjoy visually. I think that most of these works I just put together because I think they're wonderful to enjoy visually. I really don't have to say anything. I think you just need to look at the work. If I have some anecdotes, I'll tell you what they are, but I think pretty much all you need to do is look. Again, two beautiful classical images of the male nude, inherited on the left, acquired on the right. I don't know. That's the end of that story. Very similar to the ones we just looked at, the Bandinelli, two figures, and the St. Jerome. Compatible, I think, for their use of, again, the contrapposto, the gesture, the classicizing male nude. And of course, interesting to see a biblical subject, St. Jerome, to be treated as if it were a figure from classical antiquity. But, you know, we'll see that a lot. The merging, if you will, between biblical and classical subject matter. I love this comparison because I feel that they're two portraits. One is a self-portrait, the other is a portrait of a horse. The self-portrait that I really find it so haunting and so beautiful was Annibale Carracci died practically impoverished and depressed and a very low point in his life. And I think one can really sense that from looking at the presence and the expression on the face. And what I love as a detail is, if you look at the four corners of the drawing, you can see these little sketched-in lines, which I believe represent the oval of the mirror that he was looking at when he drew that picture. But I think that the gaze of both the horse and the self-portrait, I think, are really quite a nice comparison. This is the Madonna Lactans is the title of this work, Early North Italian School, which was the one that the one that we reluctantly had to sell, and that I was able to purchase it back again. And I think one of the things that I greatly enjoy about the iconography of this work is that you have a sort of a split screen image with the top half, the Virgin and Child, and the bottom half is the Last Supper. So it's almost like the first meal and the last meal on the same image. And you'll also, I don't think you can see in the slide, but it was used for votive prayers, and the congregants would take little talismans and pin them to the drawing as a way of showing worship and hoping that their prayers would be met. Beautiful coloration too. In real life, it's much more vivid than in this representation. Okay. Two images by the same artist, Millet, who, as we all know, was very avidly observing agrarian, agricultural life, the life of peasants and farm workers. The Ian Woodner drawing was, I have renamed it A Man Harvesting Potatoes. I think it was originally called Corn Harvesting, which I think was just incorrect. So I've just taken the presumption of renaming it. And then the Potato Pickers is self-explanatory. You see the little donkey in the back, which of course was very appealing to me. I keep waiting for somebody else to change the slides, and then I realize I'm supposed to do it. Okay, these are two that I inherited, but I just think they're such a wonderful pair. A very early Pablo Picasso, when he had just moved to Paris, and portrait of a friend of his. And the creases, the three creases, indicate to most of us that have looked at this drawing that it was folded up and put into a letter. So those are why the creases are there. I don't think it has anything to do with a grid or a measure or anything like that, because that's something he did not do. And then the Courbet drawing in black chalk, a portrait of man. I just think, two wonderful portraits I wanted to share with you. The Georges Braque image on the left was a part of a large book of lithographs. I'm going to say it's about 18 inches by 12 inches, possibly a little bit larger. And I'm comparing that with a Georges Braque painting, oil painting with some sand in the paint. But I think just two really wonderful examples of that artist's work. And one of the things that I love comparing these two works is the curvilinear nature of the dove, compared with a lot of the some more rectilinear sensibility of the still life. and the way, you know, with the Cubist influence of dividing the vase, the cup, in half with the two colors, and the knife is also cut in half with two colors. And the fruits, the plums and lemons, are cut in half with two colors, and the background is cut in half with two colors. So you get the idea. The painting was cut in half with two colors. It's a wonderful composition, I think. It's actually a drawing on canvas, the Picasso bullfight, the death of the matador, and the horse is also looking like he's being mortally wounded. Quite small. The fact that it's a pencil on canvas seems to indicate that it was going to be painted and then wasn't. And I, of course, like to believe that the artist was so happy with the drawing that he decided not to muck it up with color. The Gorky drawing I came upon by sheer happenstance. A very good friend of mine, Frances Beatty Adler, who we've known since we were girls in grade school, is the dealer at the Fagan Adler Gallery on the Upper East Side. And from time to time we get together for lunch, and she likes me to schlep up to the Upper East Side, which I do. And before we have lunch in her neighborhood, she invited me into her gallery. I walked into the gallery and saw that, and that was it. Then I had to figure out how to pay for it, and I managed to do that. She was not very helpful along those lines, but one never expects dealers to really give an inch. That's not their job. Their job is to represent the seller and not give an inch. But anyway, two different artists, one deeply influenced by the other, and the Picasso quite small, the Arshile Gorky large and imposing. I think a really delightful comparison. I put these two together, vastly different artists, Redon, pastel, of a fantastical scene, not mythological, but really like a dream scene of, it looks like an elderly couple setting off to who knows where in this beautiful turquoise boat with a golden marigold sail. And the Jules Zalitsky, seemingly abstract, and I just wanted to put them together to share with you because I think they're such master colorists, both. And I think that they're seeing the colors together, they really sing. But it's just lovely to see the master colorists at work. Okay, my next category, my dream on, the things that I've had a privilege to see, was unable to acquire, but I just wanted to share them with you because you also, I think, will love them. This is an amazing Perugino drawing with silver point, preparatory drawing for an image, and don't ask me which painting it was in, but it was in a painting, a major painting by the artist. And I think, again, it speaks for itself. It's just lovely, and I would have dearly loved to have had it, but I do not own it. This fabulous Guercino drawing of the adoration of the Magi, I think you call it, the Magos, the Magi, that came to visit the Mary and the Christ child. I put on the far side of the screen, I don't know if you can really see, but the kneeling Magos who's holding up a gift to the Christ child, the one on that side, on your right, he's kneeling and you can see his feet coming up in his kneeling position, and I took a detail to show the rowels of the spurs that he's still wearing. And it made me think in the artistic imagination to show how they galloped across the desert, he flung himself from the horse, and he kneeled down, still wearing his boots and his spurs. And I just think that's true artistic imagination. This came up for sale by a private seller right when we were just falling into the depth of COVID. I left the city was dying, so many people were dying. I went up to the country, as many of us who were able to did. And so I got word that the private seller was going to be selling this drawing, and of course I was tremendously eager to buy it, and I tried, but in the end he pulled back and decided not to sell. And I really do believe, because I went through this a lot in COVID, that people did crazy things when they were feeling the depression and they were feeling the angst. And I imagine that he just thought, okay, I'm going to sell this drawing. And in the end, he really didn't want to. So maybe one day he will come back to that decision, but I have a feeling he came to his senses and decided to keep it. Oh my God. Well, I don't really want to say anything about this, but I did get to see it in person. I mean, can you imagine? And to see it in person, it's obviously much smaller, but seeing it in the small scale makes it even more powerful. When you see them blown up sometimes, I mean, it's very impressive, and you get to see a lot of the detail, but there's nothing like seeing it in person, seeing it in actual size. Much more powerful. It's this big. And this was this is quite tiny. Amazing drawing. I'm going to get less and less articulate. Put these two together? That's interesting because they're so different in spirit. They're so different in presentation, in the energy that the artist is creating and trying to convey, the difference in the aspect of the head of the muse and the little bear. Now, interesting, how did Leonardo come to find a little bear? I mean, there's all kinds of theories, of course, and we think that there might have been something like a zoo or an aristocrat that collected exotic animals. But obviously, he was fascinated with the exotic animal that he saw there. But no, I think the difference is profound between those two drawings. The thing they share is greatness, but in every other aspect, they're really different. Oh my God. This was incredible. And it was quite small, really beautiful. I looked at it in the catalog. I looked at it and looked at it and loved it and loved it. For some reason, I thought it was going to go for some astronomical price, and I didn't even try. And it didn't. And I was like, I couldn't believe that I really just missed the boat on this one. That's all I can say. I just missed the boat. I could kick myself, but that's the truth. It's incredible. The title is self-explanatory, and even though it seems like a macabre scene, it is just, again, becoming inarticulate. But the rose colors and the gold and the greenish gold, the opposition of those on the color wheel is just amazing. Okay, a completely different subject, but again, equally regretful. I just love this piece, and didn't even try for it, missed out, regret it to this day. Though I did acquire the far one. I guess you would call it the one on your right, which I really love. And then, again, the drawing by his brother came up, and it's a wonderful, wonderful drawing. I didn't even try for it. So these things, I just can't explain to you why. I just get lazy, I think. But I hope you love them both. I think they're both remarkable. Look at the little dogs. So adorable. Okay. All right, so this is obviously a great drawing. And I think I did bid on it, and I was really relieved that I got outbid. I don't know why, but for some reason, even though I can recognize its greatness and its the prominence of the artist and the quality of the work, they just have to really appeal to you in a way that you can't ignore. And this one appealed to me in a way that I could ignore. Oh, I love this. This is a Goya drawing that I was so interested in. I found in the end that some of the draftsmanship was really troubling, and I never got over it. Some of the darker lines, I don't know if you can make it out, but some of the darker lines I found to be really clumsy. But I have to tell you, the subject matter, first of all, the writing across the top of the drawing in Goya's own hand, obviously, it's from an album. Don't ask me which album, but it's one of Goya's albums. It says, "This is a scene that I saw when I was a young boy and that I'm recollecting now," which, to me, it's so extraordinary that this artist could have seen this back in his youth and then sat down and drew it from memory in his mature years. And the subject, if you can make it out, there's a cleric riding a donkey, riding along, going from one place to another. And then they are encountered by a stallion led by a young boy. The stallion takes great interest in the donkey, the female donkey, and does what stallions do. This donkey seems to be quite enjoying it, very happy with the whole situation. And the cleric is getting smushed because he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. The poor boy leading the stallion is trying his best to beat the stallion off to no avail. Stallion looks like, this is my lucky day. But what I really love about it, besides the humor in the whole thing, and as I said earlier, I do love animals, I do feel, and this is just me speculating, that it's a wry commentary on the clergy and on religion, because you have the holy man dedicating his life to God and purity, and he's being overcome by the licentiousness of life. He's literally being stuck in the middle of the inevitable of animal lust. So I think it's a wonderful commentary on religion. And, as we all know, Goya was particularly interested in taking down the clergy. Oh, reflection. Okay, I don't know why I called this section reflection. But anyway, these two, the image on your left, the cactus man, Ian Woodner was a great collector of Odilon Redon and had amassed a significant collection of drawings as well as pastels and paintings. The Redon painting that I showed you earlier was one of the great paintings in his collection. I acquired the David Smith sculpture, which I think is a real oddity. Karen would probably have a lot to say about this one. A real oddity being a little bit on the figurative side, being unpainted. But anyway, it's not a classical David Smith, but what I like just visually to compare these two because of the thorny nature of both of them, and I think that they really, just visually really resonate with one another. Oh, that's the end of the show. All right, and I can't, that's something for you to look at. So do we have a talk now and then take questions? Is that how it works? Yeah. Should I turn it off? What? Am I supposed to turn this off? What? Leave it on? Should we put it to a different image, or do you want to leave that? I like this image. Okay.
It's a great comparison.
It's a great comparison.
Something to look at.
We're going to leave that in. We're going to use this image to stimulate your thought process. Okay. Well, that was fun. That was really fun.
Thank you so much. Are the mics on now?
Oh.
Yep.
Get close to the mic.
Got it.
It's,
Oh, can we-
no matter
oh.
what I do, it's in my eye.
Uh-oh.
I think just turn it off. No, turn it
Oh,
off.
no, we don't need that.
No,
Good idea.
I'm just trying to look the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so much better.
So much nicer. Okay.
You rehearse, and then there's the thing that you never thought would
That's
be.
right.
Right.
Well, I have a question. I loved the opening comparison, and there's a little bit of madness to collecting. And so one of the things I was wondering, looking at the Goya that your father acquired, was its very strong formal presence. Mm-hmm. And when you talk later about the Donald Judd that got away. So how much do you sort of not only look at the sort of connoisseurship, but these kind of formal issues of when something frontal, when something's illusionistic? And do you want to talk about that at all?
I'm a dyed-in-the-wool formalist. It was my training and it's my predilection. I always look in formal terms. But I think really the great art, there is no boundary between the formal aspects and the I guess you would call them more thematic or significant. The two kind of merge in some way and either support one another or really do become indistinguishable, and it's the same impression. But I am very vulnerable to formalism.
When you're, do you go after or start looking for a drawing by a particular artist, or is it something that you encounter?
No, I'm not interested in collecting any particular artist. Now, I would love a Cezanne watercolor.
Wouldn't we all?
Yes, we would. And strangely enough, one of the other artists that comes to mind is Agnes Martin. I would love a grid drawing by her. It's hard because you think of the greats, the canon, and of course we would all love one of those, the height of the canon. But when you encounter an artist whose name you might not even know, it can be just as wonderful, but in a very different way. But it's not like I'm out looking for something or someone. It's just, you don't know what you're looking for till what you're looking for finds you.
Yeah. But what you were saying about, of course, there are the names and the artists whose work one worships at. But when I was an undergraduate at Barnard, I was lucky enough to work with Julius Held, the great Rubens expert. And he would invite the art history majors to his apartment for tea, and the flat files would open, and all sorts of drawings would come out, which were drawings that were often unattributed, that he had been able to acquire on his meager professorial salary, but were very, very high quality. And of course, we had to try to figure out what they might be. And it was very difficult, but spectacularly beautiful drawings by completely unknown people.
And Rembrandt also, I think he was a specialist in
yes,
Rembrandt.
He was.
And,
Rembrandt and Rubens, as he pronounced
Rubens.
it.
Yeah, he also had a place in Bennington, near Bennington.
He retired
Yeah.
to Monument Avenue.
And my father dispatched me one time to take a drawing to him to get his opinion. I'll never forget that. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
But one of the drawings that I did not show, I wish I had, a Correggio drawing. There was a sale at Christie's from the rugby school, and they invented the game. And I guess the boys had to try to warm up some way because they didn't heat the rooms and they didn't heat the food, so they ran around and played rugby. But that's how they formed their collection also. The headmaster, similar to Julius, bought what he could on the salary that he had and put together quite a fantastic collection.
One of the things a collector once said to me is, my collection is my self-portrait. And this is sort of a family portrait. But it's, in addition to your inheritance and the sort of particular affection for animal subjects, is there something else that you feel is particularly you in the collection?
It is a family portrait. It's two different members of the same family. And, I think it may have been that I erred on the side of similarity when I put these slides together. I tried to find similarities. I could have done chosen different ones that showed stark differences. When I think I would leave it to other people to try to characterize my taste. But I do love the, I don't know how you describe it, but the sense of the hand on the paper, so that the actual, the touch of the artist is very important to me.
One of the things I learned about your father sideways. It was I was researching the 1939 World's Fair, and the last thing I expected to read was that Salvador Dali and Julian Levy, the art dealer, collaborated with your father to build the Venus Pavilion. And, it was sort of, it was early in his career. It was when he was working as an architect. But it's his commitment to something adventurous, outrageous. It was put in the amusements section of the World's Fair. And I wondered if you would be comfortable drawing a parallel to that venture to your commitment to the Hercules project.
What an interesting thing to think about. I also want to say, before I try to figure out how to answer that, that my dad, who was a trained architect, he went to Harvard when it was a Beaux-Arts Academy. And the first job, I think, out of school was working with John Russell Pope on the National Gallery, the original National Gallery, and he would do working drawings. And so to get from John Russell Pope's neoclassicism to Salvador Dali's Venus is a jump. That's a jump, yes. So I have no idea how he ended up doing that, but I guess they were friends. But I've never seen any other surrealist tendency. But everybody has their moments, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you just answered what was my question. Going to be my next question. Did your father end up buying any surrealist drawings?
He had a de Chirico, Giorgio de Chirico.
What
you
year?
Consider that? Well, it was the large monumental classical female figures with little heads sitting with cities in their laps. We had one in our bedroom, my sister and I, when we were little, and it was absolutely terrifying. I was really even afraid to go to sleep at night. So I had this surrealist. I guess he didn't like it that much, is why he put it in the girls' bedroom. But I was both fascinated and terrified by it at the same time. But I forgot your question.
Oh, and then the sort of quixotic,
Hercules.
Hercules,
commitment.
yeah.
Well, I'd like to backtrack there. I mean, I know that you just made a selection, but this is sort of modern masters and earlier. But Hercules, which you should tell us about, is certainly a commitment to contemporary art, which you don't seem to collect.
Yes, I do not collect contemporary art. I do abysmally bad. Really, I should never go near it. But instead of collecting contemporary art, I collect contemporary artists. The program that I started, the Hercules Art Studio program, is essentially just providing subsidized studio space to artists who want to make their recent graduates from MFA programs, emerging artists who want to make their careers in New York City. So obviously I'm doing this to help the artists, but I'm also doing it to help New York City, because one of the things that breaks my heart about New York, since I grew up here and I've been here for so many decades, is to see it kind of losing its grip on being a center of real quality artistic movements. So even though I only offer 7 studios, I think maybe 7 artists are going to make a difference to the city. But yes, that's what I do. Instead of collecting contemporary art, I pick the artists I like and give them studios and then watch what they do.
In the long run, it's going to have much more long-lasting repercussions, one hopes.
Hopefully. We'll see what happens.
I know at least one of your artists who I've been following for a while, because her day job is to work with an international artist program that I'm involved with. And I've certainly seen what the opportunity to have a decent studio has done for her.
She was Diane Lozano, very gifted artist, sculptor.
Yeah.
I've had some amazing young artists come through my program, and just so impressed by what they do, the way they think, what they create, and how they really, it's really, you're artists, you know what it's like to be an artist in this world. You're very different from other people, because what you go around thinking about is something else. It's really wonderful.
I didn't know until the introduction this evening that you also play the cello, and is there an affinity to the line of music, to the line of drawing, the intimacy of following a musical score, and the intimacy of having, okay, it's framed, but holding a drawing like this?
Well, musical scores are an interesting thing because I think that they're a kind of a clumsy and the best you can do to try to, almost like dance choreography drawings, you know. This is the composer trying to put down on papers to convey to somebody else what he wants to hear, or she, you know, what the sound is supposed to be. That said, there is an architecture and an artistry to the writing of music. And I think that it can be, if you just look at it visually, they are very expressive. Mozart's scores look very different from Bach. Mm-hmm. And Bach, one of the things that I love about Bach, and it's a little bit the way it sounds, but also so much the way it looks, is that each note is the same. It's like a brick wall, with each brick being going up or going down, but it's not these big arcs and diminuendo and fortes and, you know, long sustained notes and then little short ones or like little trills going up and down. I mean, yes, of course, occasionally, but for the most part, some of the Bach music that I work on, it's just modules, really. Mm-hmm. It's modular, it's grid-like almost. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent, but I think the important thing about musical representation is that it is a stepping stone towards what the artist wants to hear. Mm-hmm. The visual artist draw is the thing itself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's a kind of intimacy that to drawings that really differentiates them from paintings or sculpture or any other manifestation. And the intimacy of that collection is part of what I find fascinating. It's not only your self-portrait or your family portrait, but it's such a close look at the artist.
So at this point, perhaps we should open the conversation to the rest of the room.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for this wonderful conversation. So please raise your hand if you're in the room, if you have a question, and I'll bring the microphone over to you. Those online, please feel free to type your question into the Q&A on Zoom.
Hello.
Can I see you? Can I see you?
Oh, I have to stand up? Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I share your sentiments regarding with New York kind of losing its status as a focal point of art. And it's a question I've always been asking, like, what is it the next step after the breakthroughs through Dadaism and the change of the form? It's I'm trying to forecast what exactly the next steps are. And
I can't predict art.
No, it's not in the sense of predicting the art. It's just because I work in art galleries and I see other people's art. And it's something that I always question, because it's like, I think everything is kind of reached somewhat as a limit, that everything becomes kind of redundant in some respects. So it's just now that I'm looking at contemporary art, and there's always a referential to something else. So yeah, you can't predict the art movement, but I think what I'm trying to really say is what's left, and that's really where it comes down to. I think that's where we're at in some sense of art. That's the question that we like. What's the next frontier? What is the next steps in that sense? So my question is that what do you think it would take for New York to establish itself as a fulcrum, as a power?
You're asking two questions.
Oh,
you
okay.
seem to be asking what artists can do that would be new to you, yes. And what New York can do. What New York can do to establish what it once was is lower rents. Have more places that artists can afford to be at, where they can have studios that aren't 2 hours travel away. Which is part of what you're doing, 7 artists at a time.
Although I will say, as a native New Yorker who never, ever thought I would live in Texas, and have built my career there ever since, there are other cities. And incredibly vital things come out of other cities. And so I would say one thing to do is leave Williamsburg, go upstate, wherever, but also look hard at the other cities that have thriving art scenes, because you will see things there that are starting that come to New York and surprise New Yorkers. Karen can talk about the experience, perhaps, of encountering Trenton Doll Hancock the first time.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's all your fault. I was in Houston to look at an exhibition that I was writing about, or maybe was I giving the Brock lecture, something like that. And Alison said, "You have to come see this show." And it was a name that I knew. I'd seen a couple of works, and she marched me down to the Contemporary Art Museum, and there was this fabulous, charming, chubby guy with glasses. And 4 hours later, we were still talking about his show. So I'm eternally grateful to you for that. And this is an artist who was born in Paris, Texas, very sophisticated art education, although he started out thinking he wanted to be a cartoonist, and that's still in his work. Some of my students have seen his work because I dragged them to all of his shows. And he now lives in Houston. He has shown here at the Studio Museum. He's shown all over.
Europe and Asia too.
Yeah.
Andy, is there anything that your father collected that you just don't like, that you don't get, that you just wonder why on earth is this part of the Woodner collection?
Oh, I wouldn't say any particular pieces, but he did have a taste for the kind of the grand showpiece drawings, highly finished, large scale. Not my taste. Not my taste. I would have to think about one that I would really have to turn away from. I'll think about that. It's a really good question.
I thought your story about having to sell a beloved piece out of necessity and then years later being able to reacquire it was really poignant, and it made me wonder whether you have a broader philosophy for parting with works. Is it something that you do, and if so, how do you approach that? Or do you really have the intention that when you collect a piece that you're really giving it a home forever?
That's a great question. My father never sold a work of art. He did acquire debt, which is why when we inherited the business situation, it's nothing that anybody wanted to do, but we really had to do that. We did make my sister and I made a sizable gift of art to the National Gallery in Washington. We made a sizable gift of art to the Museum of Modern Art of the works from the works of Odilon Redon. I buy for keeps. I know a lot of people, and this is one of the sleazy sides of art collecting. People buy as investments, which means that they either are going to put them on their balance sheet or hope to see a gain in value and then resell them and then sell them. Well, I buy for keeps also. Thank God, I have not had to sell anything that I've acquired. But, I'm just one, you look at it, you put a ring on it, and that's it. You want to keep it. So, yeah. So I don't buy to sell, and I haven't had to. Thank God, I haven't had to sell anything that I really love. The piece that I did buy back, Ian Woodner bought it for price A. When Diane and I sold it, we sold it for A times 10. And when I had to buy it back, it was A times 100. So I really paid the price to get that work back.
Andrea, I wonder if you could speak about the impulse to collect, and if you see a difference between what drives you to collect and what drove and to collect, or are they same? Or are you coming at this process from different, loves and drives?
So that's really the whole point of this talk, which is that my father was a collector. He collected to collect. This is his idea. He didn't get it from anywhere. The way his family background, nobody knew about art. He walked into the first museum, and he said he felt like he had come home. He collected the minute he had, the wherewithal to buy anything, and he was just an avid collector his whole life. He often just basically overdid it. He'd come back from Europe with a buyer's hangover. We used to joke, and this is really true, that when he went to the sales in London or Paris, he would first go to the dealers and buy things just to warm up before he got to the auction house. I never wanted to collect. I'm an artist. I like to build things and make art. I had posters on my wall of the Piero Francesca that I admired, or the Masaccio or whatever. No, I never wanted to collect. I was never interested in it. That's what I was trying to explain. It was only when I acquired the collection and I had this substantial cultural, I guess you'd say, artifact, that I thought, okay, now this is my responsibility and my great privilege to make something of this. And because, as I said, the art market keeps happening, the motivation to build on that came from having inherited the phenomenal collection that I had. And so I'm trying to do justice to it to the extent that I'm able to. I'm trying to do justice to it, even though I'm not a collecting addict. But I do. It is true, though, that once I see something that I really love, I get the bit in my teeth, and I'll do anything I can to acquire it. Going way out and over a limb.
That's why I loved your title. It wasn't building a collection, it was building on a collection.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
it. When I first met you, you were a very serious sculptor. And you continued to keep that as part of your life. Do you feel a connection between what you do in the studio and what you fall in love with in the drawings?
Well, obviously, I have an affinity with David Smith.
One does.
Yeah. As a sculptor. Yeah. I come from that. I inherited.
By the way,
that.
that's a terrific piece.
Oh, you like it? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
do.
glad to hear it. I thought it was a little problematic, so I'm very glad to hear that you like it.
Well, it's oddball,
It
but
is
that's
oddball,
that's part of what's so
Yeah.
terrific about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And I have some spray drawings, too, that I'll show you someday that are really wonderful. No, I mean, he was Jill Nathanson knows about this. He's my patrimony, what do you call it? My lineage comes straight out of Anthony Caro, David Smith. I worked for Tony Caro. I've forgotten what the question was, but...
It's a connection with
Between what I make,
what
Yeah.
you make and what
Yeah.
you acquire.
So, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool formalist, come from the, I guess you'd say, Cubist tradition, but I still, abstractionist, so that's what I do. I'm still doing it, so. Yeah.
Andy, are you able to look at the collection all the time, or is a lot of it in storage? And if it is, do you, move things around so that you can see a lot of it? And
That's a great question. I do have the predominance of the collection is in storage. I tend to have what I live with are the things that I buy. Just out of sheer laziness, I really should go and do reviews from time to time and bring things home that I need to look at. And it's in Queens, and it takes an Uber or a subway, the 7 train or whatever. But I really should do that. You're absolutely right. I should do that more often. I tend to live with the things that I've bought.
Hi. I'm curious if you feel that the pieces in your collection sort of take on a quality that you have some sort of responsibility to keep it as a collection, that they sort of are part of one whole. Like, I know you said you don't sell the pieces, but do you feel some sort of duty to keep it as a collection and not a collection of individual pieces? Does that make sense?
I guess it makes sense. I don't sell anything. I haven't had to sell anything, and one hopes one never does. So there's nothing going out the door. Do I think of it as a collection? I think the interesting thing is somebody who I really love and admire once said that she thought I should do a book or a catalog or something, cataloging my collection as it is now. I think if I did, I'd love to do that, but with the right person. But if I did that, then I'd be able to see the collection as a kind of a portrait of the collection. But without having put that together, it is what it is, and I don't really, I don't think of it as a whole. But if I did a publication, not in any sense published for the general public, just for myself, I think if I put together a publication, then I would get a sense. This was a little bit along those lines, but it was done for such a particular purpose to compare the two. But I think if I put together a kind of a cataloging exercise, it would give me exactly what you're talking about.
The drawings were beautiful to look at, and but to hear that the majority of the work is squirreled away in a storage facility where you don't see it, no one else has an opportunity to study them. It seems very like Midasian.
What's that mean?
Like King Midas.
Oh.
You have this wealth of historic art.
Well, can I chip in here?
Absolutely.
Because paper and inks are fragile. And so keeping them on constant display is what every drawing collector knows they must not do.
Yeah, I'm not saying have them out and let anyone and everyone come and shift through them indiscriminately, but the idea of a catalog of even a portion of the family jewels would be something that would go into the future beyond yourself and your sister and your father's work. Thank you.
You do make them available to scholars and to curators and people.
Traveling loan exhibitions.
And most recently,
They've been in exhibitions.
You could have seen the Botticelli in San Francisco in one of the most sublimely curated exhibitions of the past year.
Yeah, that was the Angel Annunciate that Alison's referring to, the Raffaellino del Garbo, which I paired with the other Angel by Correggio. But I think you raise a really good point, that repositories is what we're talking about, and libraries of any kind are repositories where most of the books are in the shelves and don't get taken out and read. The Morgan Library, for instance, started as a library of manuscripts and books. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be defensive and make excuses, though. The truth of the matter is I should not be as lazy as I am, and I should get up and go out and take a look at those works more often. But, life happens, and I need to do this or that. I'm only in the city part-time or whatever. But, no, you're right. I mean, I should, even for my own self, take advantage of what I have and make more. Yeah.
Even if part of it were in a digital, online, no? All right, never mind.
That doesn't work.
But thank you for hearing my
Also, the Midas reference is a little bit stinging, I think, because it's not. No, that's okay. We're here to have a discussion, but it's not about It's not. I don't have an acquisitive nature. If I see something I love, I'm going to want it. Of course, we all do. But I'm not just trying to create a pile of, as you called them, family jewels. They're jewels in and of themselves. Has nothing to do with the family.
Comment comes from the young person who, when I asked to go to art school, my immigrant father said, "You're not Rockefeller's daughter." But then he let me go to art school, took out loans, paid them back, and then asked if I wanted to go to graduate school. So understand where that's coming from a different place, and it's meant well. I'm sorry.
No, I think you raise a really valid point, and I totally respect where you're coming from.
For the sake of time, I just would like to conclude with one final question, which is coming from our online audience, which is about the future of your collection. Would you like it to stay, do you envision it staying fully intact or divided amongst different institutions or repositories, or perhaps you don't have an answer for that just yet?
That would be an answer that I would not share.
On that mystery.
And no, I don't mean to be mysterious and coy. The truth of the matter is, things can change. I might have ideas today that I'm going to change my mind tomorrow. You know, I have had ideas that I couldn't believe, COVID ideas actually, that you know, I came to my senses. So no, the reason I don't want to answer is not to be coy, but just to say, it's just you cannot predict the future.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you, Andrea, for sharing us with your collection.